Hello everyone, welcome back to Eleganza TV. Let's kick off the new year with an exciting tutorial where I'll be showing you off how to cut and sew this stylish A-line button-down shirt dress. In this video, you'll learn how to create the pleats at the hem of the gown, how to fix the collar, and also how to make the sleeves with cuffs. If this is something you're interested in learning, then do keep on watching. If you're new here, be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss out on amazing tutorials. So without further ado, let's dive right in. Before we dive into the tutorial properly, here's a quick review and an important correction I made to the dress. After finishing the gown, I realized that it was too long for the design, so I decided to cut it at the half length before attaching the gathers. This adjustment ensures the dress fits perfectly as a short dress as intended. I wanted to point this out early so you'll be aware while following the steps, okay? Before we begin, let me show you all the tools and fabric I'll be using for this project. Here I have my Ankara fabric, which is 4 yards, alongside with my chalk, my scissors and measuring tape. I'll be marking directly on my fabric instead of using a measuring tape, so let's get started. So guys, the first thing I did was to fold my fabric into two in a bias form. This is like a slight triangle shape. So this is perfect for creating an inline shape with enough flare. Then I went ahead to rule a straight line on the top of my fabric like this. So I took my round hip measurement on the fuller part of the fabric and I made sure to leave an extra of 6 inches. So this is how wide I want the dress to be. So after that, on the starting line, I measured my shoulder divided by 2 and then I came down by 1 inch for my shoulder slant. Then for the neck wideness, I made use of 3 inches. So I'm just going to connect from the shoulder slant to my neck wideness using my straight ruler like this. So I'm cutting the back piece first of all, then I'll use it as a guide to cut the front. So the back neckline is going to be 1 inch. You're going to use your curved ruler to connect your neck wideness, or you can use a free hand to connect just like you see me doing. So guys, after marking the neckline, I went ahead to measure the half length first of all. The gown has an half length before you get your gathers. So in this part, I measured 32 inches for the half length, which I later corrected and reduced it during the preview part. So that's the reason why I showed that preview part. So instead of marking 32 inches, I should have marked about 27 inches before adding my extra inches for the gathers. So just take note of that. Just measure whatever suits you, whatever is your measurement. So after measuring that half length, the next thing I went ahead to do was to come down by 7 inches for my arm side length. So I came down by 8 inches after my shoulder slant. I came down by 8 inches, which is my arm side length. Then I went ahead to use my straight ruler to just connect straight down from my shoulder slant. So guys, after doing that, I went ahead to measure the midpoint of that arm side length, and after getting the midpoint, I came in by 0.5 inch. Then I'm just going to connect together like this to my shoulder slant. After that, I measured my round bust divided by 4 on my chest line, which is also my arm side. Then I added 1.5 inch for ease. Then I went ahead to use my free hand to just connect that to the midpoint of my armhole to form my armhole curve like so. Or you can make use of your armhole curve. So guys, having done that, I went ahead to use my straight ruler to just place starting from my bust measurement all the way to the half length like this. So you're just going to connect it the way you want it. And then after doing that, I added half an inch for sewing allowance. So after doing that, I went ahead to measure the width of the flare and it is exactly what I wanted. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to cut out my back piece. For the front part, I folded another piece of fabric in a bias form just like I did for the back. And then I placed the back piece on top to use as a guide. But since this is the front and it has a button at the front, so I left an extra 2 inches at the center for the button allowance. So after marking the 2-inch button allowance, I placed the center of the back on that point. Then I will go ahead to draw out the same shape I have on the back fabric towards the other fabric, which is the front. So after doing that, I'll be cutting out the same shape that I have on the front, and make sure that the 2 inches for your button allowance remains the same. So after cutting it like this, I kept the remaining fabric. Then the next thing I went ahead to do was to shear open that button allowance. And then after that, I decided to notch the points where the button allowance is going to stop on both sides like this. So since this is the front piece, the neckline of the front is going to be deeper than the back. So from the shoulder, I came down by 2.5 inches. Then I'm going to use my curved ruler to connect to my neck wideness like this. So after that, you're going to cut out the neckline for the front. So ensure that you've separated the back piece from the front before doing this. And then I went ahead to notch the 2-inch button allowance on the neckline as well. So since this Ankara fabric has a way of confusing someone, so I decided to just mark the point of the back like so. Then I'll open it up to fold my button allowance. So I'll be starting with one part of the front piece, and then I'll do the other one off camera. So the first thing you're going to do is fold in half an inch from your button allowance, and then you fold in 1 inch on top. So you're not going to fold it to be exactly your notched point, okay? So guys, after folding it, I decided to iron it properly to keep it on hold. So like I said, you're going to fold in half an inch, and then after folding the half an inch, you fold in 1 inch to close the button allowance, and then you'll be top stitching on both sides. So guys, because of the redness of the fabric, you might not be able to see it clearly, but right now I've gone ahead to fold and top stitch my button allowance. Then the next thing I did was to bring the back piece, and I'll be joining the shoulders with half an inch. So after joining the shoulders, here's what I have it looking like. Then I went ahead to measure the round neckline from one button allowance to the other. So after measuring, I had 16 inches, which was too small for the roundness of the neck. So I went ahead to deepen it a bit. So just measure first of all and fit it. Then if it's too small for you, then you can do this process. So after trimming the neckline, I measured from one button allowance to the other side, and I had 18.5 inches in total, but I'm just going to make it 19 inches. So I will divide 19 inch into 2, which is 9.5. So I'm going to make use of a paper stay for the collar. This is a light texture paper stay, but if you're making yours, you need the thicker type. So because this is light, I'll be doubling the paper stay for the collar. So the first thing I did was to rule a straight line on the paper stay. Then I came up by 1.5 inches. This is the length for the first collar because it is a two-piece collar. So this is the first collar, which is the bishop collar. Then I connected the line. Then after doing that, I came up by 2.5 inches, which is for the second collar. So I connected the points on this part to form a straight line. Then after doing that, I measured the 9.5 inches, which is my neck wideness, divided by 2. So I'm going to mark that for the 3 lines. And then I'll rule a straight line on those points. So after doing that, on the second line, I came in by 1 inch. Then I went ahead to use my ruler to connect to the top line, and then after doing that, I came down by half an inch on the folded part on the top line as well. Okay, so just watch closely and see the way I'm doing it. And then on the bottom line, I came up by half an inch. Then I'm going to measure what I have horizontally and divide it by 2 to get the midpoint. Then after doing that, I connected using my curved ruler from that half inch point to the midpoint of the collar like so. Then on that angle that you see me pointing, I came in by 0.5 inch, and that's how I connected to form that curve. So this is basically how you cut your collar. So if you want to cut the collar separately, all you need to do is cut in between the second line. But I don't want to do that. I'm just going to be cutting it as one collar, then I'll fold it into 2. So this is how your collar should look after you're done cutting. So like I said, because of the fact that the paper stay is light texture, I went ahead to cut it into 2 to double it. So after cutting the 2 pieces of the collar, I went ahead to place on my fabric like this, and then I doubled them to make it thick. Then after doing that, I'm going to use my iron to press it. So which I've already done right now. Then what I did next was to fold my fabric into two, which is going to be for the lining and the main fabric of the collar. So after doing that, I went ahead to cut with half an inch on all the sides of the collar like this. So guys, after cutting, this is what the shape should look like. So make sure that the both sides are equal. So before fixing the collar, first of all, I'll fold in half an inch from the collar part that has interfacing. Then I'll fold and iron like so, and then after ironing to make it relax, I will go ahead to top stitch on it. You can choose to top stitch on it, or you can just leave it like this. Then after doing that, I went ahead to place my lining parts equal together on the collar, and then I'll be sewing with half an inch on the sewing allowance. So guys, after sewing the collar, the next thing I went ahead to do was to cut out the sharp points so it will be easy to turn over. So after turning it over, this is what I have it looking like. So I will take it over to iron and press to make it relax. Then I'll fold the collar like this because this is how it should look like. So next, you're going to get the midpoint of the collar and also the midpoint of the neckline. So I place the both midpoints together like this, and then I'm just going to use my pin to secure it. So from that midpoint, I'll be arranging the collar around the neckline till I get to the end of the button part. So guys, after pinning the collar to one side of the neckline, I went ahead to do the same thing for the other side. And after doing that, I'll take it over to my sewing machine and stitch with half an inch. So right now I finished sewing the neckline to the collar. The next thing I'm going to do now is to top stitch it. So I forgot to mention that you're sewing your collar from the good side to the wrong side. Like you're placing front side facing front side of your collar, and then you're going to top stitch this folded part, this part that has this collar stay to the inside. Okay. If you have a button down shirt, you can look at it so you'll be able to understand what I'm explaining right now. The front part of the collar is going to be on the inside. So I'm just going ahead to use my pins to secure the folded part. Then after doing that, I'll take it over to my sewing machine to top stitch it down. So after fixing my collar, I'm ready to move on to the next step, which is fixing the sleeve. So first of all, I measure the roundness of my armhole for the dress, and after measuring I had 11 inches, which is actually okay for me. The roundness of my arm is 17 inches, which is 8.5 inches on fold, and then I had extra 2 inches, which is the 1.5 inch for ease and half inch for sewing allowance. So that's how I got the 11 inches. Now let's move on to cutting the sleeve. So to begin cutting the sleeves, I folded my fabric into two, then folded it again into four. This is to cut the both sleeves. So after doing that, I went ahead to rule a straight line on the top to serve as a starting line. So the length of the sleeve I'm working with is 24 inches, and I want to take out 3 inches for the cuff part of the sleeve. So I have 21 inches left. Then I'll be adding half an inch for joining the sleeve to the dress and half an inch on the bottom. So I'm just going to make the total length to be 22 inches. So after marking the 22 inches, I went ahead to rule a straight line on that point. So after that, I came down by 4 inches from the starting line, which is going to be for the cap height of the sleeve. And then on that cap height, I measured 11 inches, which is the roundness of the armhole. Then after doing that, on the top of the sleeve, I came in by 2 inches. Then I went ahead to connect together using my free hand like this. So this is how the sleeve shape should be. So yes, having done that, I measured my elbow length. Then I went ahead to measure the roundness of my elbow, and then I added 2 inches for ease. So this is totally optional. You can choose to just measure from, just rule a straight line from your armhole straight down to the end, or you can do this process. So you can do whatever you want depending on how wide you want your sleeve to be. So guys, after connecting the sleeve like this, I went ahead to cut out the lines that I've drawn out. So after cutting the sleeve, this is what I have it looking like. So I'm going to add 3 inches for the cuff to complete the length of the sleeve. So next thing I did was to notch the midpoint of the sleeve, and then I'll be showing you how to fix the cuff. So then I marked the wrong sides of the fabric as both sides look similar. Then I placed the both right sides together like this, then measuring 3 inches from one side and then go up by 4 inches from that same point. And after doing that, you're going to connect the 2 points together like this and then cut open on that line. So ensure that you place the right sides of the fabric facing each other before you go ahead to cut. So then after doing that, I folded the hem of the sleeve and notched the midpoint. Then the next thing I'm going to do is to fix the plackets. So the placket I'm fixing for this sleeve is a tiny placket, and the length is 9 inches long and the wideness is 1.5 inches. So this is for the two sleeves. So I'm going to be working with one of them first, and I'll fix the other one off camera. So guys, before I go ahead to fix the placket and the cuff, I'll first of all pleat the excess of the sleeve to the roundness of my bottom arm. So after measuring the roundness of my bottom arm, I have 9 inches, but I'm going to make it 10 inches because of the joining allowance. So what I did was to pleat from the notched point. I went ahead to pleat facing the placket opening. So I did 2 pleats to fit the roundness of my bottom arm, okay? So after pleating the sleeve, this is what I have it looking like. So I measured what I have left, which is 10 inches, and it is very okay for me. So I'm going to do the same thing I did here on the second sleeve as well. So after pleating the bottom sleeve, I'll go ahead to run a stitch on it to hold it down. To fix the placket to the sleeve, first of all, place the placket fabric on the sleeve opening with the right side facing each other. Then pin it along one side of the opening. Ensure that it is aligned properly. Now, when you reach the top of the slit, you're going to pivot the placket to align it to the other side and pin it down as well. So you can see the way I'm doing it right now. This will ensure that the placket wraps around the opening very well. Then after pinning, I will take it over to my sewing machine and start sewing with half an inch seam allowance. So after pinning the plackets to the sleeve opening like so, I'll take it to my sewing machine and stitch with half an inch. Then when I get to the top of the slit, I will narrow the seam to 2 centimeter and then turn it over to continue sewing with half an inch till I get to the other side. So after fixing one side of the placket fabric to the sleeve, I trimmed out the excess, then fold the other side into two to cover up the rough edges. So to make it easy for me to sew, after folding it, I use my pins to hold it down. So I'll just go ahead to top stitch on the folded part. So guys, after sewing it like so, next thing I went ahead to do was to place the both side of the placket together, and then I'm just going to run a stitch on that sharp point like this so that it can be relaxed on the front. So after I was done fixing the placket, the next thing I'm going to do now is to join the sides of the sleeve with 0.5 inch seam allowance. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to fix the cuff for the sleeve. So you're going to measure what you have around the sleeve from one side of the placket to the other side. So I have 10 inches. So for the cuff, I'll be cutting directly on my paper stay, then I'll transfer it to my fabric. So on my paper stay, first of all, I'll rule a straight line on the bottom to make it straight. Then after doing that, I'll go ahead to measure 10 inches, which is the roundness of the bottom sleeve. So the paper stay is folded into two, which is for both of the cuff for the two sleeves. Then after measuring 10 inches, I went ahead to rule a straight line. Then after doing that, for the length of the cuff, it is going to be 3 inches long. Then I also went ahead to rule a straight line to make it equal. So the cuff is a straight cuff, but you can also go ahead to style it whichever way you want. There are some kind of cuff that are having some kind of V shape under it, so you can do whatever you like to do. But I want to make it straight. So I went ahead to cut out the lines on my paper stay like this. So I went ahead to cut another piece of the cuff on my paper stay to make it thick, just like I did for the collar. So I ironed the paper stay on my fabric with half an inch seam allowance all around it, just like I did for the collar. Then I folded one side. So after doing that, I've gone ahead to place the both of them together like this and then sew on the sides, the half an inch seam allowance. Then next thing I did was to turn it over to the good side and use my scissors to push out the sharp points. So I folded the cuff and then I notched the midpoint. Then also on the sleeve, I'm also going to place the two placket side together and notch the midpoint as well. Then after doing that, you're going to get your cuff and place from the wrong side of the fabric, place the both notch points together. Now you're going to start sewing from the wrong side of the fabric, and then the folded part that is on the cuff will be on the right side. So after doing that, I'll show you how it looks when I'm done sewing. So that half inch that I have there, I'm just going to pin it all around from one end of the placket to the other side. And then after sewing with half an inch, I will turn it over to the front. The folded part I have on the cuff, I will be top stitching it. So guys, this is what I have it looking like, and this is for the sleeve placket. Now I'm going to fix button on one side and buttonhole on the other side, and that is all for the sleeve. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to fix the sleeve to the round armhole. So first of all, I'll be joining the side of the dress with half an inch before I go ahead to fix the sleeve around it. So guys, because of the placket, you need to be strategic about your sleeve when you're fixing it. So the placket is going to be on the back of your hand. So I'm just going ahead to arrange the sleeve well. So this is how it's going to be. If you have a shirt, you can see how it is done. So after arranging the sleeve for both sides of the armhole like this, then I will take it over to my sewing machine and stitch. So guys, after fixing my sleeve, this is what I have it looking like. Now the next thing I went ahead to do before I fixed my gathers was to measure the length of the gown. So after measuring the length of the gown and I put it on, I figured I was now too long. And this was what I was explaining in the beginning of the video. So I went ahead to cut out the excess that I need, and then I went ahead to measure my gathers fabric. So after cutting out your half length, the remaining fabric to complete the full length of your gown is going to be the length of your gathers fabric. So I needed to add a total of 8 inches. Then I'm going to cut my gathers fabric to be longer, to be about 10 inches for folding allowance and joining. So to get the wideness of the fabric that you need for your gathers, you're going to measure what you have on the hem of your gown from one side of the button to the other side. So after measuring, your gathers fabric is going to be wider than whatever you have on the bottom of your gown. So guys, for my gathers fabric, I cut out the remaining pieces of the fabric that was left from the 4 yards. So I cut it into several pieces. Then the length is 10 inches. Then what I'm going to do now is to stitch all of them to be one piece. So guys, after doing that, after stitching all of them to be one piece, I'm going to fold on one side. After folding the bottom on one side, then I'm going to draw gathers on the top. You can either draw gathers or you can just pleat it to be equal with the wideness of your bottom of your gown. So after drawing your gathers, you're going to fold the both sides of the gathers fabric into two like this for your button. So guys, after fixing the gathers fabric to the bottom of the gown, this is what I have it looking like. So if you find this tutorial helpful, please do well to like, subscribe if you're yet to subscribe, and also drop a comment if you have a question or if you just want to drop a nice comment. See you in our next tutorial.